March 25th FinCom meeting. Called to order. Rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mike.
We have a couple presentations for tonight. First, we have Mark Morris from Southeastern Regional to present their budget.
Good evening, thank you. My name is Mark Morris, School Business Manager, Southeastern Regional. In front of you, you have our FY20 approved budget as of last week by our school committee. I'll go over it and hit some of the high points. Feel free to stop me at any point. I can answer some questions, or at the end I can take some questions, whatever you'd rather do as I go through. So our FY20 school budget is at $28,589,574. That's made up of foundation budget being $26,660,198. And that's made up from state aid of $16,745,721. Local assessments of $9,789,477, and $125,000 from our excess and deficiency account. The second portion that makes that up is transportation. So this is the portion every year where I ask you, if you do see your legislatures or your senators, representatives, to let them know that this is important to the towns, because regional transportation should be funded at 100%. It hasn't been funded at 100%. Last year was roughly 72%, and that's what we're looking at roughly again this year. So that being said, the total cost being $1,567,651. We get $1,019,088 in state aid, and the difference in local assessments of $548,563. We do have our MSBA project. If you recall, roughly about 7 years ago, we finished that project, and as we promised the towns, that payment is $361,725 a year. The local assessment is $192, which we haven't increased. It's been the same for over the last 10 to 20 years. And we pick up the difference from our adult ed receipts of $169,725 to pay for that portion. What you will see new this year is our OPEB. We're actually going to fund some of our OPEB this year at $50,000. And we're taking that from our excess and deficiency account. So on the next page, you'll see our enrollment at Southeastern. So our enrollment from FY19 to FY20 is up 22 students, and from the town of Norton, it's up 4 students from 92 to 96. So the town of Norton makes up 6.3% of our total enrollment at Southeastern Regional, the third highest. So obviously, what does that mean to the town? So on the third page, you'll see that the assessment to the town of Norton from FY19 to FY20 has gone up $125,106 to a total of $1,172,402. Quickly, you can see on the next page, there's some historical data, some budget comparisons. So for from FY19 to FY20, there's a 4.7% increase in our budget. And I just do want to remind you that Southeastern, we work at minimum contributions, so we're at where the state says we need to be to educate the students. So we're not asking for anything more than what the state says we have to have at that point. We've added this in the last couple of years now. This sheet, the next sheet is it's new, because I know a lot of times there's always a question: how much does it, cost to educate a student? Why do some towns get more in state aid, some get less? So overall, every student that's at Southeastern, it's the same cost to educate. It's $18,110 per student. The difference is how much state aid the towns or the city get from the state. So you can see that the only difference, or not the only difference, but the real difference is the red, which is the state aid. The only thing that we really can control is that sliver of blue at the very top. So you can see that in the town of Norton, there's $12,213 in cost, and then state aid gets $5,897 per student. In the next page, what are some of those factors that go into the actual formula or to the assessment? You see enrollment as percentage as a community. So as you can see, Southeastern is up 4 students, but overall, in the town of Norton, you're down 91 students. So that obviously affects some of the aid that you get, some of that funding. So being down students overall, then Southeastern being up, you see some of that shift. So be a decrease and an increase in Southeastern. Looks like the revenue growth factor is 4.47 for the town. Good news is the state saying the town's doing well, so property values are going up, income's going up in the town of Norton. Bad news is then they say you can afford more by those two factors, some of those factors going up. And then the rest is really just some data on, the Norton school system there, that's on the Department of Ed's website. I'd be happy to take any questions or what you have.
Rick?
Yes.
Mr. Morris, how is transportation costs determined or factored for towns? How's that broken out?
So, again, we take our enrollment, and every
Yep.
year, depending on the town, the communities from, because we have 9 communities, we put that in place, and then it's the number of runs that we need to get students to and from school.
Okay, so we're at 6.3.
So where's the 6.3? I'm
So,
sorry.
yeah, I think Stoughton was in front of us, and is there,
Oh, enrollment.
yeah, is there transportation cost?
So if you look at the 3rd page, so the 3rd column from the end says net transportation costs, so the assessment to the towns in the city, the 548, 563, is broken up by enrollment.
Right, so,
So 6.3% of that total cost. So for the town of Norton, it's $34,397.
okay. So it's simple math. Just co-factored out? and-
Again, because it's based on enrollment. So
Yeah.
that's broken up by enrollment.
Transportation.
Correct. So you'll see that, the town of, or the city of Brockton pays the 348, 630.
Right.
Because they have 60% of the student enrollment.
Right, okay. I just didn't know how.
Yeah, no, it's based on enrollment,
yeah.
yeah, the ratio.
Everything's based on enrollment.
Correct. So again, if you look at that page there, all the breakdown, and then it goes by each town and their student enrollment
Yep.
ratio. If there's no question, I'd like just to say that we have over 20 programs at the school. If you hadn't have a chance to come out, take a look as the school's going on, I think you'd be very impressed to see what goes on there on a daily basis. We have a culinary program that has the Colonial Room open to the public daily in the afternoon for lunch. On Tuesday evenings, they actually open it to the public with our adult program, runs that part of it on Tuesday evenings, open to the public as well. We've introduced legal and protective at the school, as well as life and natural sciences programs. Again, the school right now is, again, if you're there during the day, I think you'd be very impressed to see what the students are doing and what's going on. If you have a chance, April 9th we have a call, or called the Taste of STI. So it's our technical institute. They have vendors that come in from the community as well as the students in the culinary program, and they have some different hors d'oeuvres, things like that, just to kind of get an idea for what's going on in the community. Phantom Gourmet will be there that night, so good time to showcase the school, take a look, see what's going on. If you have some time, glad to have you. If any of those times don't work, feel free to reach out to me. We'd love to have you set up a tour, whatever you need, we can get you in.
What is the most popular top 3 vocations there?
So this past year, again, and this shifts, so, it's not this, but this past year, plumbing was our top vocational pick. Legal and protective, very close second. Again, so cosmetology, carpentry, but yeah, plumbing was our top pick this year. Automotive was also a very popular pick this year. So it kind of fluctuates on, the students, the population coming in.
Yep.
But again, those tend to be in the top 5 to 10 usually. And culinary is always there's always weighs someone's heart through their stomach, so.
And getting to something near and dear to our hearts here in this committee, as you probably saw us all smiling. This year, what was with the OPEB?
$50,000, so really, it's really a token amount, but at least the school committee feels like we're making a move to show that, again, it is important to us. It is important to us, but it's just one of those debts that we can't fully fund at this time.
And is this the first year, or the first year increase, or?
This is the first year we've actually funded OPEB.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you. Yes, it's the first year that we've actually voted to fund OPEB. We've had the account established for a couple of years now.
Yep.
This is the actual first year that we've actually funded the account.
And how much is the overall liability?
Just under $17 million.
What I'd like to know is how you got away with not doing it this long, and can we do the same thing?
Again, I don't
I mean,
think,
this committee has heard me on this many times. So I won't belabor you with my feelings about OPEB, but,
again, it's not an expense that we don't realize. It's just, again, having the revenue source to fund it. It's really what it comes down to.
Mike?
We have to fund OPEB as a show of, financial strength or
Correct.
whatever. And we, it would be to our detriment not to fund it. But what happens to you if you choose? I mean, what are the consequences if you don't?
Again, so our bond rating as well
Okay.
gets affected.
Same
The school has a bond
There you
rating.
go.
It's-
They just don't have to borrow it. You got your buddy, you know what, right?
Hello.
So,
Gee,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thank you very much.
thank you.
All right, have a great night. Thank you so much.
Sue.
You.
Mike, thank you.
Thanks, Mark. And next, we have the Chairman of the Water and Sewer Commission, Luke Grant, and the Superintendent, Frank Fornia, to talk about the water and sewer budget and their capital requests.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike. Good evening. I'm going to let Frank do the presentation because he's more familiar with the document. If I can add, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good evening, Frank Fornia, Norton Water Department. Please bear with me, it's my first time being here.
Welcome.
Do you all have a copy of the water and sewer?
Yes.
Okay.
You have water and sewer, right?
Sewer's in
Sewer's
front.
first.
Sewer was first, and then water.
Sewer was the first one. Are we dealing with water now? Water.
Would you like to go line by line or large items? I'm not sure what you guys have had time to review.
I would just, myself, I would go through the large,
Sure,
what's really changing year over year.
all right.
And you want sewer or water first?
We're going to do sewer first, if that's okay.
Yep.
Sewer first? All right.
Sure. All right, we have a few cost estimates for upgrades to the existing sewer system. One of them is actually for the Cobb Street Sewer Station. It's actually turning 30 years old. There is some significant issues with water damage coming into electrical conduit that needs to be addressed almost immediately, as well as some issues with the ventilation system that currently is inoperable. That creates a different type of confined space entry that you need to be licensed permit to go inside. So we avoid that at all costs without having to set up the permit with the chain fall, everything that you need for the confined space entry. We have a cost estimate on that, and this is to replace the ventilation system, the electrical conduit that is leaking, as well as new lighting inside the wet well itself, and replace the existing generator that we've had some issues with getting some parts for over the years. The cost estimate on that is actually $220,000.
So if I could, you are on several pages in on the capital.
Cap.
Cap. I'm looking for
Yeah, that's what I
well,
was
the
looking
kind
for.
of, or further down, well, at least have a question on the first line item,
Yep.
on the salaries. The delta between 2019 and your request is 77,000, almost 58%. You're at 132,947 last year, you're at 210,035
This year.
this year.
There is an additional expense that has been added to that. The town has looked to finally fund the assistant superintendent position, which has had a line item but has never been adequately funded. So there's additional monies involved for that salary. Part of it comes from the water, part of it comes from the sewer, as well as the superintendent's salary is also split the same way. We have a third person that we are actually covering the position. This person is actually out on leave and has been out on medical leave for quite some time now. So there is one additional salaried person in the sewer department that actually is not currently here.
Our other reason for adding the assistant superintendent position with our imminent online activity with the water treatment facility, we're going to need more and more experienced and just more bodies to actually man the plant when it comes online and we take it over. So we believe an assistant superintendent with the appropriate treatment licenses for the water plant is critical to oversee and or train the guys who are coming up in the department. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We've had this position conceptually for some time now, but it's really coming to a head with the treatment facility and the numbers of guys we're going to need on that.
Thank you.
Good on that. Another was actually to construct a new sewer storage facility. Currently, we actually share this facility with the sewer equipment and what we use in the water department. They actually store their stuff in our building. We use as many safety techniques as possible to keep separate items as far as sewer-related items away from water items. Being in the same building, you can never tell if somebody has to move a vehicle, something happens, something spills. The best safety is for elimination and have a separation of the two entities. Some of the sewer equipment that we use, unfortunately, comes back and is still not 100% sanitary. It's just impossible to do so. Storing it in a building with forced hot air, you circulate all those germs and everything else that basically we sample for in the water. We've actually come up with a pretty good price actually from a local builder in town who's given us a good cost estimate. That comes up with just around $100,000. That's for a 40 by 60 by 14 metal building, insulated, includes the slab, 3 overhead doors that are 12 by 12, lights, and the door operators. Additional costs would be for running an electrical feed to this building and a propane feed for the heat, because the building will need to be heated because of the equipment that we use in the sewer. And that was asking $100,000 for that. The building actual cost is $91,274. The additional money was to cover the electrical and the heat.
But that wasn't approved by...
That was not recommended by the capital committee, correct. That is something I feel strongly about, separation between the two departments. We take over 100 samples a month as far as for bacteria on the water side, and this is stuff we sample for that you cannot see.
What about in the summer, dehumidification? Is that an issue?
We haven't had any issues, again, knock on wood, for the time that we've stored all these together. I'm not sure something as simple as a dehumidifier is going to solve the problem with bacteria and viruses that are always present in the sewer, and obviously go along with the sewer vehicle and apparatus that's used with it.
Not to get too much into the sewer nuts and bolts, but you folks understand. We have a sewer jet machine, which alleviates sewer clogs. How about that way? And when you bring that, out of the system itself on the job, you decon it, but you bring it back, and let's all say you wouldn't want that next to the truck that's going to go out and do the well service that same afternoon. We looked at this several different ways. There's not enough square footage in that building to have an actual bay of separation for each one. So theoretically, somebody gets into the sewer truck that just came back from a clog, moves it out of the building, jumps into the water truck, and goes out to take samples for chain of custody water samples that are being submitted that day or even the next day. Heated building, on and on and on. Samples come back bad, we have to notify we got a hit, and really it's just our combined issue at the garage and not even a water well issue. So we looked at that and said I mean, maybe it might be extravagant now, but we think it's reasonable, and I don't see why we couldn't make that work.
Would that be coming out of, I think I asked you a question before, would that be coming out of retained earnings, or would that be coming out of out of the capital improvements?
No, that would be retained earnings.
Do you have enough money
Out of
in
sewer.
retained earnings?
Yes, we do.
What, Peter, why did they vote it down? Is there a reason? Oh, Mike, sorry.
Mike,
Peter's our
Probably
representative,
would be the reason. I would ask Mike.
because you were on the committee.
One, we have the same concern that you have. We want to see, we'll look again in the fall, see how the sewer revenues are coming in, if there's enough money. And two, there's a number of communities larger than Norton that have public works departments, and they don't have separate buildings. They're able to follow protocol and keep the equipment separate, so we just felt that put some protocol in place, keep things separated, make sure the water guys and sewer guys have separate lockers, and that they change their clothes and wash and everything else. But there's a number of towns and cities that have public works departments where they do everything, and they have one garage.
Well, do you have to like decontaminate, you know, as a truck comes in, you just have to wash it down? Or how do you?
Before we take our water samples, we usually always wash the vehicle that we're going to be using, or vehicles, the day before we go do samples. The concern is the unknowns. When there's people that are on call in the evening and they get called out, and if there is a sewer clog and the gentleman has to go in, now he's the only one there, so the garage is full of all the vehicles. These vehicles have to be shuffled around to gain access to the sewer truck or possibly to the jetter if it's that bad of a problem. Again, moving them back in at the end of the night is the major concern. You can't leave these vehicles outside because of the equipment that's in there, possibility, especially in the wintertime, it could freeze, or vandalism, which we've had in the past from anything that's been left outside. That's the main concern. Additionally, when the vehicles, everything is stuffed inside, you have the additional problems with the heat in the wintertime blowing around any of these things that you cannot see. If you can smell it, you know it's there even though you can't see it, and unfortunately you do smell it every once in a while when the vehicle comes back from an issue. This is just a simple thing to eliminate one of those issues. You know, move it to a whole separate holding location. It would still be down in the John Scott Boulevard location, just a separate building. You know, we're running out of room with what we have now as far as for water equipment, and with the sewer department equipment inside there, it makes it even tighter. Wintertime, we try and have everything ready with the plows and everything on, and there's usually a few vehicles that have to be left outside, which poses a concern for vandalism.
So there's nothing like an industrial car wash apparatus as the truck comes back to just kind of go through that to get it all cleaned before it enters?
I do not know of any. I'm sure they do make some.
Yeah, they're a really high-tech DPW. They filter the water, they reuse the water, and it's, you know, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. This is really, we're not saying we want dirty trucks by any stretch of the imagination. We're just trying to say it's an attempt to isolate any possible overlooked issues from a short staff that has a lot to do, and like Frank said, it's that exact scenario. You never, the problems never occur 7 to 5 or 7 to 4. It's, 10 p.m., the guy's out for 3 hours, comes back at 1 a.m., does his level best to, you know, decon what he can, puts the vehicle in question back in, and somebody 5 hours later comes back and very well may have to go do well tests. And again, that's a worst case scenario, but if you prepare for that, it's not going to surprise us. Knowing it, I could be furious if and when it happens. Because, again, you have to notify the public if you have a hit. for the bacteria at a well. And it really might not be the water, it may be the vehicle, old vehicle in what transports that bacteria at the well site. And again, I'm not trying to paint any picture and say we're not clean, we are. But it's just another added level of insurance, and for the amount of money, again, I will refer to the staff increase and the water treatment plant coming online. We have to have, more people, more vehicles. Frank has also instructed me that some of the sewer pump stations have different pumps, different devices in each one, which we stock one of everything. So we're not caught short-handed in a 7-day back order if we have an emergency. So as you stock up, excuse me, as you stock up those items on our already full shelves, it becomes a little Rubik's Cube of what do you knock over, and does that,
Say we have one of these scenarios you're depicting where you get a false water sample or, a bad water sample because the person doing it wasn't able to decontaminate themselves well enough in between, executing the two tasks. You say you'd have to reach out to the public and let everybody know that, you'd have to be upfront about reporting that issue immediately, even if there was a possibility that, if that were to happen, what additional expenses would you incur? Would that cost you money?
Can I just say something on water? We have water guys and we have sewer guys. Someone doesn't go work in the sewer and then go test water. So they're separate.
we're just saying in the current scenario that sewer jet truck might have to be moved by a water guy. And I think your question is bringing up to the concept of, we wouldn't, if we get a contamination hit at the wells, it's only in those sample bottles from the wells. We don't know where it comes from. And again, it's...
Right, but really my question is...
I'm flushing extra man hours.
Now what's the expense to that, right?
It's always some more money. I can't quantify it, but it is certainly more money. From the advertising and the expense of flushing out the wells and losing water and the revenue that water would generate, sure, it's money.
I'm just trying to weigh, I get what you're doing, right? You're saying, let's spend some money to minimize our risk. I'm just wondering what the risk, financially, what the risk is.
Right.
You can meet with the contamination committee,
Right.
but at the finance committee, I just dollars,
I understand.
So, I don't know, is that a number you could?
To quantify an actual, what we'll all refer to as a false positive at the wells,
Hard to put a number on.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it would depend on what site had a potentially bad sample. If it was a storage tank, obviously now you have to flush all the water out of the tank, chlorinate the tank, fill it, take another round of samples. Hopefully that passes. That'll prove that it was just a bad bottle or a bad sample technique. Then you could put that back online. You still have, the public notification. That usually stirs up quite a few phone calls, and people want us to go out and flush the area, even if it's not even near that area. So you have the additional time in manpower, as far as usually it runs into overtime, as well as the additional cost for the samples. This is just a technique that we've thought of, and this is the best solution we come up with to eliminate one of the potential problems.
How many times has this potential problem occurred in the last 15 to 20 years?
We have had numerous false positive samples that have cleared by resampling. There is no guaranteed explanation of how it happened. It could have been the handling of the bottles from the shipper to the laboratory to the people that pick up the bottles at the lab. We bring them back here. There's multiple different scenarios that we have unforeseen answers. We sample for things that you can't see. We sample for things that are this long when you write them on a piece of paper. It's never ending what they're asking for us to sample. It's just one more technique. When you go to classes, the first thing they actually want you to do is police yourself. This is one thing that I figured was a good thing to start.
So this new building wouldn't prevent someone from what you described as a bad sampling technique, right? You wouldn't prevent that.
You can never prevent that. You never know exactly what causes that. This is just an additional step to eliminate the possible cause of a contamination. If you have a bad sample, one of the things that they ask you to do, like I said, is police yourself and look at what could have been a possible cause, especially if it's determined that it was a bad sample bottle. Was it human error? Was it a bad bottle? Bad sampling techniques, procedures, and you're supposed to police yourself. If you explain to somebody that you store the same vehicles in the same facility and you may or may not had to move one of these vehicles or weren't sure if somebody else had to move it, I'm sure they're going to frown highly on it.
Mike?
So there's no way to determine where the contamination came from, ever. So there's no way to identify how much these false readings have come from the cross-contamination of the personnel, so.
There is correct, exactly. There is no 100% determination of what has caused the bad sample. If, God forbid, we had a problem and it came back and you resampled, let's say it was in a tank. If you had a sample come back a second time around and it still comes back bad in that tank, now you know you're limited to that facility. They'll actually request that you take samples upriver and downriver from that possible contaminated site to make sure that it didn't migrate to the system. If those come back bad, you're isolated to the tank or the well, whichever area it is that came back bad. You are forced to isolate that, public notification, and the DEP determines what cause of action you have, whether it be chlorination of the tank, drain the tank. They actually set the protocol for what is required.
So, building the building, you would not know if it's an improvement or not.
You are correct. We would say it's a move in the right direction.
It's just one more thing to eliminate, I understand. But,
Right, it's an
but
effort.
you don't know if that's gonna.
Right, it's an effort to isolate any of the bacteria that live in the environment that the sewer tools live in. That's all.
But you have no quantification, no empirical evidence to say that that would actually.
No, absolutely not. It's one of those things, it's a chain of custody. I don't know how many of you are familiar with sampling protocol. There's many sheets, and each person along the chain of custody has to sign for it. And everybody in this vocation is very on their toes. It just, things happen. And it's shocking when you come back with a simple retest and then the bacteria goes away. So it's something other than the well itself or the tank.
I don't think we're questioning the professionalism of.
No, I'm just saying
We're
it's.
questioning that, yeah, we think $100,000 is gonna help us with this problem, but we can't say, once we build $100,000 and we build this building, that we're not gonna have this problem, or that we've eliminated this possible piece of the problem, even though it could be some other stuff. We just think that it might improve it. But you can't say that. Can you say at some point, once we build the building, that here's the numbers before and here's after, and wow, we saw a 10% improvement, or a 2%, or 30% improvement in our samples? Is that something that you could come with us with data, so that the next time you want something like this, you could say, well, look, last time we built the building, we were trying to remediate this risk, and wow, we reduced the risk by 20% by just having a building. It makes common sense, yes, to store them like that,
Right.
but is it gonna help you at all? Even though it makes common sense, if it's not gonna help you reduce the risk, then why spend $100,000 even if it kinda makes sense? Did I make sense with that? I don't know if I did. I'm just saying, if you're gonna spend the money, can you show that you're gonna save that money?
I understand we're in the FinCom world.
Yeah,
You guys
sorry.
need quantification. I appreciate your position. I can sit in your chair and ask the same questions. I can't give you that. This is from 0 to 1 hit is too much for us. So if it reduces it by some, I'm good with it. I know it doesn't make quantifiable percentage-wise numbers sense to you. It's not going to.
I don't think, from my perspective,
Yeah.
if it was 1%, would make sense. The percentage doesn't make to me, but if you can quantify that it did help you with the building, I think we could at least rest easy then.
I'll just be the devil's advocate.
Go ahead.
Conversely, you take
Yeah.
that $100,000, you amortize it over the capital budget.
Yep.
And then you take it, reduce it, what's your percentage of increase of being more successful?
Right.
And then the bigger picture is you build upon that and go from that.
Yeah. Great. Just,
Just one man's opinion,
I,
from another man.
we beat that one. Yeah. Beat that one. Enjoying yourself?
So, in the budget, other than the salary increases, the expenses are pretty stable. And the salary, as Frank said, was, a good deal of it's attributed to that superintendent, assistant superintendent, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I believe we have an additional 5,000 in there for repair and maintenance in buildings. A few of the buildings are having some issues that, just general maintenance as far as, painting and soffit repair, things like that. There was a large increase on the treatment plant costs. That's the cost taken on by Norton for the MFN. You're going to see that is substantially increasing.
And when's that set to go online?
The water treatment plant, the date that we have right now is actually June 10th, is when the first well shall be turned on to the plant this
This
June.
year.
Whether that gets distributed to the system has yet to be determined. There's a process involved that you have to prove that the plant is operational. The first well is actually going to be well number 4, which is on Plain Street. That's going to come offline May 29th. They tell us June 10th is when it will be operational to the plant after a well cleaning and a pump replacement. There's a gray area depending on DEP. It can be 3 to 6 months before they grant you full operation of this water treatment facility. For that time, it has to be manned all the hours of operation. This is where you're going to see a cost increase if we switch over to the water for additional staffing. Currently, we do not have the staff to run 3 shifts, which is what we match for our run hours at the wells. This has got multiple different reasons why it'll have to run that long, mainly because of the age of the infrastructure that's in place right now. There's some significant improvements that need to be done to the existing wells. We're actually trending the wrong way as far for our specific yield at all the wells. We actually have a meeting Wednesday, to discuss further actions at all the well sites to find out the best possible scenario for increasing the yield.
Is there a best guess as to why the yield is decreasing, or?
Sure. The iron and manganese that's in the ground that we're putting the plant up to get rid of. It clogs the structure around the well. When the wells were put in back 30, 40, 50 years ago, however far you want to go back, the screens that are in place are very small openings because of the large particles of sediment that we have. With a new treatment plant going online, you could essentially replace the screens, but that's a brand new well going in place. That opens up the openings, you get your capacity back, you take all your debris out through the treatment plant. But that wasn't something that was thought of when these were installed way back when. Multiple different cleaning techniques have been done on every single well that we have here in town. They only come back a very small amount, and when they do, it's for a short period of time, because the gravel pack around the wells is still highly concentrated with iron and manganese. You can only get the chemical out so far and then draw it back in. There's, unfortunately, one of our wells had a partial collapse of the screen, which was well 6. We had to put a second screen in place. So there are 2 screens to try and get the chemical to surge out of and pump the clean water through. Essentially, there's not too much more to do with that well other than replace that well.
So, jumping around.
Sure.
So in June, it opens, but only 1 well.
Correct.
And then how long does it take to get the other, I thought there were 3 altogether?
Yep, there are 2 more wells, wells 5 and well 6. Those are scheduled to be online usually if we hold true to what it is now, depending on the schedule that we determine on Wednesday, it looks like it's going to be August. We're looking to change the schedule of the cleaning that has to be done on these two large wells because of the time of year that it actually falls into. It's the worst time of year possible for us. As far as for consumption, it's just not a good time to have any of the wells down, but we're going to do what we can to work with the contractor and change the schedule of the cleanings of the wells so that when we have to take one well offline, we can have it down for a shorter period of time. We'll set up, most likely the cleaning will be done earlier than originally anticipated, and then when it's time to take that well offline and install the new low head pump, there'll be less downtime for the connection from the well to the treatment facility. That is the goal for Wednesday's meeting.
I was looking at the water and some of your expenses, and the chemicals jumped from 17 to 18, and then really jumped to 19, 255,000, but you've only spent 72 so far. Is that just anticipation of cranking the chemicals at some point?
That is an anticipation, yep. There are going to be additional chemicals that are going to be needed at the wells. We're going to add potassium permanganate, which is a coagulant.
Yep.
The cost on that is yet to be determined, because until the plant has run successfully for a short amount of time, we will not know what the batches are. There is a potential that the chlorine that we normally add now for disinfection may actually go down when you remove the iron and manganese. That is the long-term goal. So you may have a wash on chemicals. That is all we can hope for. Again, it's going to have to run its course and see exactly how it turns out.
So, last week, unrelated to water sewer, but we had a presentation midweek at the high school regarding, town hall and new community center. And in that, they could tell us that if you were to do this, your tax rate would go up by X. Do you plan out, I'm sure you do, so bear with me on how I formulate the question. As you plan out what you're gonna do in the town, whether it's the treatment plant, whether it's replacing pipes, any of that, do you have a guesstimate of how that impacts the ratepayer?
There is a rate study that's actually going on now, and that actually should be done, I believe, June. That's probably not going to go into effect immediately in June. It's probably going to wait till 2021. I believe you will see an increase, mainly because of the electricity costs that it's going to take to run this plant. Not so much as the filtration costs or added chemicals, but you're going to be pumping the water 3 times by the time you get it from the ground into the system. So there will be an increase. I could not even guess what that is going to entail. These are going to be the state-of-the-art pumps. They're going to have variable frequency drive, so you're going to get the best bang for your buck. But I don't think there is any way, at least I can't do it, to figure out what the cost increase may or may not be.
So that's on the treatment plant, but say you just did it on my street, and, half done, the water main replacement on Reservoir. So that was a mile-ish, I forget how many feet the whole project was. So the cost of that project, what does that ultimately do to the rate? So that's what, that's what I'm trying to figure out. So if you're gonna do that again on, some other street within the town, the rate, I'm gonna assume, is gonna go up.
Every capital improvement is definitely going to have an impact at some factor of the cost for the water. The reason for the upgrades are usually because it's a problem area. Either the pipe is undersized or has multiple breaks, or is a type of pipe that we don't want to have in the system anymore, which creates more dirty water or poor water quality. That was the reason Reservoir was replaced, because we've spent more time down there putting pieces of pipe in than we've spent most time anywhere else in town in quite a few years. That was part of an upgrade that was looked at many years ago. Elm Street and Reservoir were supposed to be done at the same time.
Yep.
I can't speak for previous administration as far as why Elm Street wasn't done. The money was there to do Reservoir. Reservoir was done. It's improved the water quality tremendously in that area by calls that we used to receive, and that's something we do have logged. And people that we speak to in the area have made comments that they were put out by the disruption by having the construction down there, but they are pleased with, the way it turned out with the water. The road still has some work to be done, and they will be back in the spring to finish that. There are multiple other sections of town that have some deplorable systems on the ground still. Those are in place to be replaced as well.
As far as though, I know, again, you're looking for, is it 10 cents a cubic foot for $1 million? That
Yeah.
project was around $1 million. It was a mile of pipe, about $1 million. Those, I'm not sure, was that retained earnings, or did we borrow for that?
I believe the Reservoir was borrowed. I'm not
So-
100% though.
So in the event where we borrow for it, we stretch it out for a number of years, so the impact on your cubic foot of water is very small, if at all. So you would have to do several of those back to back to increase, to just have those increase the actual water cost. The treatment plant, however, is a big jump.
Right.
And that, I'm sure, will generate a little bit of pressure on the upside to the water rate. Again, we have a industry professional doing his number crunching with everything that we know about today to project what we think it should be, and we'll have that in the coming months.
Okay. One last question, at least from me. Probably jumping back to how we started the conversation, and maybe this is just rumor, I don't know. So, on the Reservoir project, when it came to switching from the temporary pipe back to the new pipe, that got slowed down supposedly through the grapevine because of unacceptable water tests. So I'm just trying to figure out, well, if the water was okay to the point of the beginning of the project, and it's okay elsewhere, why?
It's, what you're getting at is, why did it take, I think, did they do 4 tests or 5 tests?
I believe there was 5.
Yeah.
So they failed 4 tests and they passed on the 5th test. The contractor, again, they're a reputable contractor, they've done a lot of work in the area. We were very happy with the speed at which they installed the pipe. They could have had something as foolish as a contaminated rag or a bucket of soap to lubricate the gaskets, the glands that go in the pipe
Yep.
to seal. Could have been some bacteria on it, who knows? I install water mains myself, and it's not a perfect science. You try to do the best you can. You introduce chlorine to get rid of all the bacteria, and then you flush that out, and you test them. They unfortunately had to do it several times, which put them into the fall, and you know the rest of the story from
Yeah.
seeing it. But
Yeah.
again, we're very happy with the performance. The pipe itself went together really well, went together in a very organized, rapid manner.
Yeah.
Construction-wise, the main is great. There must have been some other factor. Maybe there could have been something in the pipes that were delivered to the site. You don't know what happens, on the.
It passed a sewer truck on the highway.
Very possible.
There you go.
I'm not gonna do that one, you guys can do that. But, it's that sort of thing. So, once you get that flushed out, again, you've got the bypass on, and we don't introduce that water to the system.
Right.
At large until it meets our specifications. So, once it meets, you bring it through, you flush it out, and you go again.
Mr. Chairman?
Yep.
I'm not gonna try and nail you down, because you've already told me I can't be nailed down on this, but I will tell you, the sooner that we can get any information about anticipated rate increases, the better off for us.
Understood.
Thank you.
When we get it, we will share it with all the channels.
Was there anything else that jumped out as far as a large increase that you wanted to discuss?
I'm seeing no. So, Mike, does that building request, can they, if capital said no and you said no, but it comes out of their retained earnings, can they still do it, or is that that's a no?
No, not unless capital approves it, or if town meeting approves it,
Okay.
you know. You could make a,
We're just-
you could
we're
make
just
a
gonna call it an
recommendation.
F-550.
You can make a recommendation opposing capital's recommendation.
Yep, yep,
Just like any other presentation.
okay, all right.
All right, thank you very
Good.
much.
Thank you,
Thanks.
and welcome.
Hope it wasn't too bad.
Hey, Frank. Frank and Luke.
The mayor.
Just before you leave, you do have two articles too. One article is Article 13 on the warrant, and that is for work to be done out here on Route 123 from Pine Street to 495, and that'll connect all the properties along the way to the water main that was installed
Some time ago.
quite a while ago, before I got here in 2011, so, but they never did the connections. So as part of the Route 123 project, that contractor will do the work, and it'll be paid for out of water receipts. Do you have you don't have an estimate yet? We're still waiting from the state and the engineer for the water and sewer department to determine what that cost will be. So that'll be, we'll have that before town meeting, obviously. And the other project is, again, the West Main Street sewer project. That is due to be under construction in July. They're going to try, it's going to be very tough because they're going to come out of Wheaton on a 140 along the southbound lane on 140 on the west side of the road, up to 123, then down to the high school. And they're going to connect the schools, and then that'll be gravity fed from there down to the pump station on the Wheaton campus. Then they'll be going the other way, using the trench where the pipe is now that the schools are tied into. So it'll be easier for any digging going down to the housing authority for the force main. And still waiting for a final cost on that because they're looking at requirements that the state has in the roadway. The state now wants all the work done out in the center of the road, which is going to add to some of the costs. And we're going to have a discussion with the selectmen about doing work at night rather than during the day. Because if they work during the day, the state has a requirement that their hours are 9 to 3, but 9 to 3 is not going to work for us if they're working in front of the schools. So they'd only be able to work like 9 to 2 and they'd never get the work done. But if they can work at night from, I think the state's normal hours are 9 to 5, and maybe sometimes they can increase that 8 to 6 just to get more work done. It's going to be very tough digging, and they anticipate at some points only moving 10 feet a day. So it's going to be a tough job, but it's well needed for the housing authority and the schools and all the businesses along there and any residents. So,
But the residents are gonna suffer tremendously if it's night work.
well, that's the thing. There aren't that many residents along that route, mostly businesses, so we'll have to look at it and see.
Paul?
When is the, at the moment, anticipated start of construction?
In July,
This year?
yeah, after school gets out this summer, and then they'll start right away, starting from Wheaton, heading out.
Yeah, all right, you're planning on this summer?
They had a great meeting the other day. The schools were here, people from Wheaton were here, state was here, just to give them some update on what they're planning.
Any logic why you go down the middle of the road and not like on the sidewalk?
There's so many utilities in that road right now that, not to interfere.
The thing is, once, with a state road, once you, I'm not sure the exact locational requirements, when you're towards the middle of the road, they require you to overlay the entire road to state specifications. So the entire overlay on a street like Reservoir is something, but it's not a state road. Now, the state road, as we all know, that we're working on is very wide. So if you're on the shoulder, you only have to do that half of the road. Everybody's already crowded into each shoulder, for obvious reasons. In some spots, we can work in the shoulder, but you want to be able to allow your contractor to make as much physical progress as possible and not have things like telephone poles be compromised. And I mean, some of this work is 16 feet deep. That's in the more invasive part of our excavation world. You really want to be 8 to 10, 12's okay, 16's really, really deep for what they're doing, in the material they're doing it in. So you want to make it so they can actually progress. And if it has to be in the middle of the road, that's where you have to go.
Is that 16 because we're going gravity feed down? Is that what it is?
There's a couple of crossing existing drainage structures which you want to go under, and then you shoot for gravity, so you get that, and then do the slope per foot, and boom, there you go.
Over the years, I've heard many conflicting stories about how much of East Main Street and West Main Street is town road and how much is state road. I've never heard anything that was definitive about it. Is that, do we have this in this project? Are we dealing with both sections that are town road and sections that are state road?
This is all state road.
Okay, right through the center.
Yeah. It's 123 West Main is state highway, and then 140 state highway.
Because I have been told by people who should have known that there were sections, particularly of East Main Street, that were still town roads.
All of East Main is town road, and all of West Main is state.
Okay, but when we move down this way, we're dealing with a town road then.
No, the town road doesn't start till after you get through the center. Like this project all out here is town road.
Yeah, okay.
So it's
So this
at the
is
preschool.
the one going down toward 495 is town road.
Right, from the center of town, after you get through the center, after you get by 140, heading to Easton is all town road.
All right. Does that make a difference in terms of?
If we were going this way, it would be better. It'd be the town rules and regs. Going the other way, it's state rules and regs, and they have jurisdiction over, just like Mike said, hours of operation, trench replacement, road plating, securing road plates, and not that contractors are going to do anything they want. It's a more stringent level of oversight.
But it may not affect you, but we have a big project that's going on East Main Street.
Right.
And that is being governed by town regs rather than state regs.
It appears that, although when they get to the bridge, it's probably state.
It's put out to bid. It's state road, but we're doing all the work with state funds, so they will put it out to bid, and they will control everything.
What's the logic between a state road and a town road when it's 123? I'm trying to figure out.
There's some, I know in my town, I don't know how it gets worked out. It's just probably when a town needed money to do a road and they didn't have it, and they got the state to take it over. We have Route 37 in Holbrook. At the town line, it's state. It goes for like half a mile. Then it becomes town for a mile and a half. Then it comes back to state again. And believe it or not, when the plows go down, the state plow goes, picks up his plow. They don't, it's crazy. So we're not that bad. I mean, at least.
That sort of thing I was
Okay.
thinking about, in terms of all of these various projects.
His
Right,
problem
it's-
is he gets.
Not all water.
We're not really that segmented from the, from my understanding, like Mike said, with the water project going, towards the highway, that's going to be done by the same contractor that does the state work, on the water department's budget though. And
So
it's-
140 is all state, and West Main is all state.
That I knew.
But everything else-
I thought this was town,
Yep.
and it is. And I just wondered what difference it might make in all of these things, who we had to answer to.
And as Luke was saying, the state said, you know, the selectmen can say they want work done at night, but we're the ones that make the final decision, because we get the calls, because it's a state highway, so we'll see.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. The other, next on the agenda, have a request for a reserve fund transfer. We budgeted $75,000 for unemployment, and our bill this month is $9,742. So, assuming that that stays the same for the next 4 months, we'll need a reserve fund transfer, because we only have $7,713.09 in the account right now.
I move we transfer $32,000 from FinCom Reserve to account number 001911570517.
Second.
Your motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Unanimous?
And you have a notice in your packet, I believe, for the special town meeting that's going to be held on April 17th. This was a petition town meeting, signed by 200 residents, and they submitted, with the petition, they had to submit what they're looking for, and they submitted an article to change all the solar bylaw back to where it was before the town meeting voted in January to change the bylaw. They're now proposing to change it back. I know the selectmen did ask them, can you wait until the May 15th special town meeting and the article will be on there, but they wanted to do it. By law, we have 45 days once we receive the petition, and so we have to have it that week. So we chose Wednesday, April 17th.
And most likely, this is in response to the solar cranberry bog.
Right. Yep.
Stuff.
And
Bonnie?
So anything that was entered into between the January meeting and the April meeting, were anything to change, would be subject to the current bylaws.
Correct. That's why we tried to get them to see if they'd wait until May, because it won't affect any filing that's already been done.
Right, okay.
Same.
And just to look at the schedule, I'm asking that our next meeting be April 8th. I'll be away next week. And I wanted to see if you wanted to meet twice, April 8th and 10th, because the following week, you're not going to be able to meet because Monday, the 15th, is a holiday, and we have the special town meeting on the 17th,
No meeting.
unless you met on a Tuesday. But that's up to... So if we met the 8th and the 10th, Monday the 8th and Wednesday the 10th, and if you wanted to meet on the week of the 14th, it would have to be on Tuesday the 16th, because Monday's the holiday and the special town meeting is the 17th.
I don't know about, well, I don't know, that's school vacations.
Okay.
Right.
So maybe is Monday and Wednesday?
8th and 10th would work.
Is that okay?
Yep. And then back to Monday, 22nd and beyond,
Yep,
22nd, 28th,
22nd and 29th.
or 29th, sorry.
Yep.
Okay.
April 8th, 10th, 22nd.
Bonnie?
Would we have a meeting before the special town meeting, like usual? So 6 o'clock?
On the 17th?
You probably would, because the time frame is so tight that the planning board has to advertise once a week for 2 weeks, at least 14 days before they have a hearing, and then they have to get you their recommendation. So you might, I'm not sure when you'll get it from the planning board. You know, you might not get it until just before that meeting, yeah,
We might
so,
be making the recommendation
right,
half an hour before we go to the meeting, yeah.
right.
17th.
Yeah, so if-
And that's the only thing on that meeting.
Hopefully. The warrant's open for 5 days, but hopefully that's it.
Closes April 2nd, right?
Yes.
What time do you want to meet?
It would be the usual.
Hour ahead?
And on 6.
Eight.
Oh, for the 17th,
Yeah.
6 o'clock.
Yep.
8th, 10th, 17th, 22nd, and 29th, is it?
10, 17,
Yep.
22nd,
That it?
Yep. And 17th was at the high school, everything else is here.
Yep, correct.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
And I should, I'm sorry to jump back. I should have, hopefully, all my budget recommendations done this week.
Okay, yep.
So I'll email that to you when I get it done.
Thank you. I have no minutes, so nothing else unless someone else does.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes?
Make a motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. Any further discussion? Hearing, seeing none. All those in favor? That appears unanimous.